So, today we're making beef with béarnaise sauce, and this is something that's eaten a lot in Sweden, and the macros for today are 785 calories per portion, 49 grams of proteins, 52 grams of carbs, and 37 grams of fat. And this might be something that you think is complicated, but once you know how to do it, it's actually fairly simple. So, first of all, we're gonna start prepping our sauce. And to do that, we're going to cut 2 pieces of shallot. I only had 1, but if you have 2, I think that would be better. And we want to chop these up fairly fine. What we're going to do then is we are going to cook these with white wine and vinegar. You can use red wine vinegar or you can use white wine. I'm using red, but white works as well. So 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, and then we're going to add 50 grams of white wine. We want to reduce this until there's like a tablespoon of liquid left, but since we don't want that to happen too fast, we're also going to add some water so that the tastes of the shallots actually have time to develop. And we're also going to be using tarragon, and traditionally this is made with chervil as well, but that's not something my local grocery store had, so I'm only going to be using tarragon, and it wasn't a lot, but we're going to throw some stems in with our shallots and some leaves as well, and also a handful of peppercorns, and we want to bring that to a boil and start reducing it. And since we want to reduce it by quite a lot, it's good to pay attention at the end, because at the end this is gonna be reducing quite fast. I like to keep it on medium heat, and that means that it's gonna take roughly 20 minutes or something for this to reduce. And as I said, we're going to be done when we're at roughly 1 or 2 tablespoons. And how much liquid you have left will implicate how much butter you will need for your sauce to thicken, but that also depends on how thick you want your sauce to be, and I know that that's different for a lot of people. And here we're getting close to 1 tablespoon, and from here on out it will be very quickly as the liquid reduces. Here you need to pay close attention, and this is roughly 1 tablespoon, I'd say, a bit more, but that's good enough for me. So we want to drain that and make sure that we get all the liquid, so we're going to press the liquids from the shallots out. And once that's done, we are gonna just chop up we want everything to be ready for when the sauce is thickened up, so that we basically just can pour everything in. We're also going to be using 125 grams of butter. We're going to be using clarified butter, so melt the butter and just separate the transparent stuff. I didn't use all of the 125 grams of butter. I ended up using roughly 30 grams per portion. But all we need to do then is add 2 egg yolks to a pan. And we want to do this at low heat. And what we are going to do is that we're going to keep this at a very low heat. My stove goes to 9, so I'm at 2.5 here. And we're going to be adding our reduced liquid. And then all we want to do is just keep whisking our egg yolks and our reduced liquid until it's thickened up. And once that's thickened up, we're ready to add our butter. And as you can see, the pan's not hot at all. You can touch it, and I wouldn't touch it for that long, but it's absolutely no problem touching it. And once this has thickened up, all you need to do is just whisk in your butter, and it's actually a real simple process. So it's difficult if you don't know how to do it, But if you just do it slow and steady and keep whisking, it's gonna be fine. This is thickened up enough. That means that it's time to start adding our butter. And I'm gonna go for 1 tablespoon at a time. Just add that, whisk that in properly, and once you've done it, you can add another one. I've also lowered the heat a bit, so basically we're at 1.1, so very low heat, and that's really all we need to do. Just keep on whisking and adding the butter. And as I said, we didn't end up using all of our butter, we just added, basically used 60 grams. But this depends on how thick you want your sauce. My wife wanted her fairly loose, so I did it a bit too thick and had to add some water to it in order to make it a bit less dense, but we'll get to that part in the end. And as you can see, nothing is splitting, everything's fine. So it's really all we need to do is just whisk that, add the butter slowly and keep whisking, and it won't be a problem at all. As long as you've beaten your egg yolks and your reduced liquid at the beginning, this is gonna be fine. And once you're happy with your consistency of your sauce, you add your herbs, and you add some salt, and you add some pepper, and that's basically it. This is one of the classic sauces, as you know, and I think it's fairly easy to impress your friends with this sauce, because a lot of people fail at making it. So this is the way I like to make it, and we're gonna, as I said, add some salt and some pepper. And to this dish I like to eat potatoes. I like to use a mandolin to cut the potatoes fairly thin, and here my camera stand was holding on to the power button, so everything shut down without me noticing, so all I really got was me failing at cutting the potatoes. But I like to cut the potatoes fairly thin, and we're gonna put them in the oven at 200 degrees and just stack them like this. And if you have, I would suggest adding some low-calorie spray to this, and then some salt and pepper, and as usual for some low-calorie cooking spray to this. And as usual, we're gonna salt the potatoes a lot, because potatoes require a lot of salt. So make sure you get every piece of potato salted, and we're gonna add some pepper and some thyme. And then we're gonna put them in the oven until they've started to brown up. And once they're a little bit brown, we're going to increase the heat in the oven to 225 degrees Celsius. And this takes roughly 20 minutes as well. And that's just some thyme. All we need to do is just shove those in the oven. And I promise you I'm working on replacing my oven light. And to this we're gonna be cooking some filet mignon. We're just gonna make sure we salt all of the sides and add some pepper to this as well. When we get here and we have started to see some color at the potatoes, we're just going to increase the temperature to 225, just to get a bit of final roast to them. And then we're going to start frying our meat. But this was a piece that I took directly from the freezer, and pushing down against it here, I started to think that something doesn't feel right, because it was fairly stiff. And once I measured the temperature, I could see that it didn't go to plan at all. And this piece of meat was still frozen inside. So an inner temperature of -1 is not optimal. But sometimes things doesn't go as you plan. And that means that we need to save this somehow. And the easiest way I thought was just cut it up into smaller pieces and fry those individually. That means that we're gonna have a bit frozen core, but since we want the core to actually don't cook as much anyway, that should work out fine. And it did. So we actually got a good sear on them and ended up with a nice inner temperature of the meat. I usually go for 52 degrees. And it turned out great. So I think just don't panic and try to come up with a nice solution, and it usually works out. And here we are with the sauce that my wife thought was too thick. So we're just gonna put this on low heat, and that means that we can add some water and heat this up a bit as well, so it's nice and warm when we want to eat it. And same thing, be careful here that you don't use too high heat, and everything should be fine. And if you want to be super accurate with your calorie tracking, there's a link in the spreadsheet as usual where you can go in and change the amount of butter. So if you use 20 grams of butter or 80 grams of butter, you can just adjust the amount of butter there and it will calculate the calories for you. So that's it. And as usual, everything becomes a bit hectic when it's time for the plating. That means that I did not have any footage of the potatoes when they're done. And as I said, we did not use all of the butter. We had 60 grams of butter left. So basically used around 30 grams of butter per portion. And this is the final result. It's a bit blurry, but it turned out great, and it really isn't a difficult sauce to make. So I hope you try this, and I hope you enjoy. And if you do, please let me know. Thanks for watching.